Whether you love it, hate it, or find your opinion somewhere in between, Alien 3 marked a noticeable decline in the quality of the Alien series, following two classic, just about untouchable films. While at the time it was meant to be a concluding chapter in a trilogy, this third film in the series painted much of the Alien franchise's potential into a corner, forever changing the trajectory of the story, which began in 1979 with the original. After Alien 3, only one more movie expanded on the larger original story, with Ripley introducing her clone 200 years after the events of Part 3. The rest of the movies have been prequel stories, with two Alien vs. Predator films set on modern-day Earth and two prequels directed by Ridley Scott set a few decades before the events of Alien. One of the biggest perceived mistakes of Alien 3 was the decision to discard the characters of Hicks and Newt, who were characters many fans invested heavily in with Aliens, and fans have always been left wondering about the untapped possibilities in following these characters. We've seen glimpses of these possibilities in the original Aliens comics, which followed Hicks and Newt as the main characters, as well as in the unproduced William Gibson script for Alien 3, which has since been adapted into a comic of its own and an audible audio drama. The beloved characters, however, have never survived within any kind of official continuity, which has made something such as the cancelled Neil Blomkamp project for Alien 3, which was said to take place after the events of Aliens and would indeed see a return to these characters, all the more intriguing. Fans have already been speculating over the new Alien 5 treatment written by David Giler and Walter Hill, which may hint at the events of Alien 3 and Resurrection being a dream, thus continuing the story after the events of Alien and correcting the course. It's been nearly 30 years now since the release of Alien 3, but during that time, fans have always wondered if it could somehow be retconned and done in a sensible, satisfying way. In 2013, the video game Aliens Colonial Marines was released, and its writers did in fact make an attempt to play around with the bridge of the events between Aliens and Alien 3, and the game offered a partial retcon of the third film's perceived mistakes. The most drastic of these being the erasure of Hicks's death in the EEV crash on Fury 161, and also the attempt to fill the infamous plot hole of just how that pesky xenomorph egg got on the Sulaco. The bulk of Aliens Colonial Marines is its own original story, with its own original characters taking place on LV-426 after the atmosphere processor explosion, and of course encountering more deadly aliens in this aftermath. But a separate DLC campaign, Stasis Interrupted, illuminates what happens to Hicks. Michael Biehn reprises his role, lending voice work to the production. As the campaign begins, it is revealed that in unseen events during Aliens, approximately after the Marines escaped from the Hive, Burke was able to secretly send a message to WEYLAND-YUTANI. Received message from WEYLAND-YUTANI Special Projects Director Burke Carter J. Message is transcribed as follows. I don't have a lot of time. The Jarheads are checking out the pickup spot. Look, they're gonna nuke the site. I tried to convince them otherwise, but look, you need to send a ship now. I've already got a backup plan to get the specimens back to you, but I can't be sure if... Female voice heard in the distance. Hey, Company Stooge, we're moving. Help me lift Gorman. All right, no problem. Message ends. In response to this message, WEYLAND-YUTANI sends an expedition to LV-426 to retrieve specimens, finding eggs still viable within a derelict ship after the blast. The specimens are brought aboard the USS Legato, which is carrying abducted colonists from Earth who believe they were signing up for work at a frontier colony. With the company's newly acquired specimens, the colonists are used as hosts to breed xenomorphs aboard the Legato, which is heavily secured by their private military force. As the breeding and experiments progress, the company pinpoints the location of the Sulaco through the network and the colony's computer logs, sending the Legato to intercept the vessel and tie up loose ends, presumably to silence the survivors of the Hadley's Hope incursion, who at this point are still in hypersleep. While an umbilical is being tethered between the Legato and the Sulaco, all hell breaks loose with the xenomorph specimens. Aliens and colonists are freed, as the WEYLAND-YUTANI private military contractors scramble to contain the breach aboard the Legato. Two escaped colonists, Turk and a former Marine, Stone, devise a plan to make it through the umbilical to board the Sulaco and seek help. They're successful in doing so, but trigger-happy PMCs are not far behind. At least one specimen has made its way through as well, a facehugger that has apparently found its way to Ripley. Turk and Stone take Hicks out of hypersleep, who awakens and turns to see Ripley in the pod near him. Much to his shock, a facehugger has been attached to her. Hicks is taken out of his pod, disoriented and panicked, as 3 PMCs enter the area. A struggle begins as Stone attempts to disarm one of them, who fires off bullets that graze the facehugger attached to Ripley. The acid blood spills to the floor, beginning the electrical fire that sets off the emergency evacuation sequence. The alarm notification that is heard during the opening of Alien 3, Stasis Interrupted, Fire in Cryogenic Compartment, blares as Stone, Turk, and Hicks attempt to fight off the PMCs. Turk is beaten, thrown into Hicks's cryopod, and trapped inside. Hicks and Stone kill the PMCs but are unable to override the evacuation sequence. Hicks watches helplessly as Ripley, Newt, and Turk are loaded into the EEV. From this point forward, the events of Alien 3 are meant to play out exactly as we see them in the movie. The EEV crash lands into the waters of Fury 161, and Ripley is the only survivor. Newt has drowned in her cryotube, Bishop has been smashed beyond repair, and the occupant of Hicks's cryotube is impaled by a support beam. However, we now know that this is not Hicks, but actually Turk. Since he's a similar build and look to Hicks, he's impaled beyond recognition, and all the identifying files are in order, there's no reason to believe that this is actually a case of mistaken identity. With all of the efforts this campaign makes to offer an explanation of how a specimen got into the Sulaco, and the old switcheroo with Hicks and Turk, curiously, we're still left with the enigma of one single facehugger that makes its way down to Fury. Unless there was some other unseen specimen, and the remains of the first were never recovered, then the theory still holds of a special breed of royal facehugger. This facehugger was able to impregnate Ripley with the Queen, detach itself, and later find a host for the runner alien, which plagues the prison planet. That still would leave a little bit of an inconsistency, though, since the facehugger seen on Ripley in the game certainly doesn't match with the facehugger that's later found by Murphy in the abattoir. One looks to be your standard run-of-the-mill facehugger, while the other looks to be a unique type with unique abilities. As the story of Stasis Interrupted continues, there is further bleed-through with the events of Alien 3. Hicks and Stone are able to remove the umbilical between ships, just as other surviving colonists on the Legato activate the self-destruct sequence, destroying all of the newly attained specimens. Hicks is determined to save Ripley and to send a distress call, so he and Stone set a course for Fury 161. Due to the speed at which the Sulaco was still moving during the conflict, they arrive unfortunately too late, missing out on most of the events that take place during the course of Alien 3. Hicks and Stone make their way to the leadworks just in time to see Ripley making her sacrifice and jumping into the furnace to her death. Witnessing this, Hicks falls to his knees in despair, and the WEYLAND-YUTANI commandos advance upon him, capturing him and bringing him back to the new operations on LV-426. There, Hicks is confined, chemically tortured, and interrogated by Michael Weyland, played by Lance Henriksen, also returning to lend his voice work to the production. Stone is killed, and with the aid of a conscience-stricken company scientist, Hicks is able to escape, at least temporarily. He fights his way through the facility and is able to partially send his distress signal before being captured once again. This serves as a prelude to the story of the game's main campaign, taking place about 2 weeks later, where the new group of Marines respond to the signal and eventually find Hicks. They ally and vow to continue to wage a battle against WEYLAND-YUTANI and all of its sinister plans. This is all a little wacky, maybe too contrived, convoluted, and maybe not as clever of a fix as the writing team may have hoped it to be. It's certainly not unusual for extended universe stories to sneak in their own events between movies and ask of the fans to suspend a little bit of disbelief for the sake of giving us something new. There's of course Alien Isolation, telling the story of Ripley's daughter Amanda having her own battle against the xenomorphs on the Sevastopol space station, taking place between the events of Alien and Aliens. While it's a bit of a leap, the story is done well enough for us to buy it, and it doesn't really step on any toes or change the story or affect the outcomes of existing characters in any drastic kind of way. Even something like Alien Out of the Shadows, the novel and audio drama, also taking place between Alien and Aliens, which reveals Ripley was awakened from hypersleep 3 decades into her 57-year drift through space, ultimately finding her way to a new ship with a new crew that encounters aliens from a mining operation on the moon of LV-178. There she sustains life-threatening injuries and undergoes an operation in a medpod that also happens to repress her memory of these events, and she finds herself right back in the cryosleep pod of the Narcissus where she's found at the beginning of Aliens. Something like that may be a little hard to swallow, but what actually works so well about that story in Out of the Shadows is that it deals heavily with the theme of dreams and Ripley's trauma. So technically, if a fan wished to do so, it could simply be interpreted as one of her many nightmares within hypersleep. It doesn't create any consequence for the movies that followed. Aliens, Colonial Marines, and its campaign, Stasis Interrupted, undoubtedly creates a severe consequence, and asks fans to believe that before the events of Alien 3, Hicks's body was switched by a colonist who was abducted by WEYLAND-YUTANI after the company found new specimens and began a whole new operation on a ship that was eventually destroyed, and that somewhere out there, our favorite Frosty Marine still may be alive. Perhaps that's just asking a little too much of us. Upon its release, the game and its story was touted as officially canon, but of course it didn't receive the warmest of welcomes. The criticism of Alien's Colonial Marines is infamous at this point. The hype, the promises made, the eventual disappointment is all well known. This may very well be a case where the response was so negative that the canon offered was outright rejected and ignored entirely by fans. Surely there are fans who enjoy the game for what it is, find enjoyment out of it, and feel the criticisms are exaggerated, and that's fine. With the state of the franchise as it is, it feels less like a solid defined canon and more like a choose-your-own-adventure anyway. But personally, I don't really accept the offerings of Alien's Colonial Marines as canon. To me, Hicks is the one in the cryotube at the beginning of Alien 3. He's dead, along with Newt, and nothing has really changed that for me. At least, not so far. Who knows what the future may hold. As I see it, though, Alien's Colonial Marines and Stasis Interrupted is more of just an alternate fate for the character, not unlike what we've seen with Earth War and Gibson's Alien 3. An interesting enough story, but not an official part of the continuity. But that's just me. I'd love to know what you think. Do you accept the events of Alien's Colonial Marines and Stasis Interrupted as canon? Do you feel it's a fair enough leap to make, and that the bodies were switched, and Hicks is still around? If so, do you think there's any way they could continue what was established in the game? Maybe not necessarily a sequel, but maybe some kind of spin-off, or a story in a different medium altogether, like a comic or novel? Or do you choose to ignore it altogether? Comment below and share your thoughts. As always, I'd like to thank you very much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, and you can also subscribe for all the latest videos from the channel. My very special thanks goes out to WEYLAND YUTANI executives, EmYarUk, Mark Fox, and in the Ellen Ripley tier of excellence, Lady Anne. My thanks also goes out to the Hive Queens, Ronni Jensen, Alyssane, and Jackson roesch, all part of the Patreon Hive. If you'd like to join the Hive and support the channel, check out my Patreon page for exclusive posts and contests. In the meantime, you can catch up with Alien Theory over social media. Follow @alien_theory on Twitter and @alientheoryyt on Facebook and Instagram for more. And until next time, this is Alien Theory, signing off.